Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another episode of Rachel Out Loud. Welcome back. If you've been listening to the last few episodes, you already know we've been talking about what I've been calling inherited imprints. And just to recap quickly, those are the early experiences that shape us before we know we're being shaped, definitely before we understand what's going on, and before we can give consent. So things like your family you're born into, the religion, the culture, and environment you grow up in, traumas you experience as a kid that you didn't choose, things like that are inherited imprints. And I think I've shared some of mine with you guys. I've shared love and family. That was one of my earliest imprints. Feeling unseen and ignored. Early depression. I experienced depression very early. Nature becoming a place where I learned to regulate, feeling a lot of instability from moving around a lot, never really feeling settled or like I had a place that was home and that was going to stay home. Yeah, so that's me. And if you've been paying attention to my story, your own story, if you're asking yourself questions too, then you've definitely noticed that these patterns, these behaviors, these triggers, they don't stay in childhood. None of them stay in childhood. They grow up with us. Right? They grow up with us and they show up everywhere in our relationships, our reactions, our bodies, our choices. They're there. So today I thought we kind of talk about what happens after awareness, right? Because realizing your patterns for sure is life changing. It's huge. It is. We're not going to belittle that at all. It's the beginning of something real. But there's this space after, I feel like, after awareness and recognition and all that good stuff, and before change can start to take place, there's this space where it's so frustrating because it's like this in between where you can still see all of your patterns and all of your behaviors, but you're still doing them. So it's like, yeah, I'm not unconscious anymore, but I'm not healed either. I'm watching myself in real time, like, oh my gosh, there I go again. What am I doing? Why can't, what's wrong with you? And you start to kind of like criticize yourself in it. There's shame in it and disappointment in it. And you can be really incredibly hard on yourself because it's frustrating and discouraging. For sure. That was my experience anyway. Like, for sure. You cannot unsee like you can't unsee the patterns anymore, but you don't just magically know how to like stop doing it and how to stop being toxic and all that stuff. So I think let's talk about that. I think a situation that I've really learned a lot from, or situations in my life, were my relationships that I've had, my romantic relationships, right? So I didn't see it for a long time. I didn't want to see it, to be honest. But I was really afraid of being alone, yo. Like, I was really afraid of it. And of course, I didn't walk around saying that. Like, I definitely didn't admit it to myself or to anybody else, of course. I didn't identify that way. So I don't know. I would have told you I'm independent, I'm strong, I don't need anyone. I'm with him because I want to be with him. But honestly, after a while, you have to kind of like, there are just things that scream at you and you can't ignore them, right? Year after year, I kept making the same choices, relationship after relationship. I would stay in these relationships, guys, where they've been over. I'm talking like years. Like I'd be in a relationship with someone where I knew it was dead for a year, 2 years. Like it just didn't make sense. Like I was done, finished, wasn't in love, none of that. But I just wouldn't leave. I wouldn't leave. And then I realized, girl, you don't leave until you got your options lined up. Like you don't leave until there's someone else, someone in the background. And I'm not even talking about cheating. I'm just talking about knowing that there's someone that you can pivot to that's ready and waiting. I don't know. And I think for a long time, I was always asking the wrong questions because I was very much like, oh, he's a villain and I'm the victim. So it was always like, oh my gosh, why do they switch up? Why do men act like this? Why do men cheat? Why do they treat me like this? I'm a good woman. Like, I just was asking all the wrong questions because it was all about them, right? And to be fair, when you're hurting, that actually makes sense because everything feels like it's happening to you, right? But once I started looking at myself, that didn't even matter anymore because those things were true. They were cheating and they weren't treating me right. But there's something bigger there. The question was that I should have been asking myself all along is why do I keep doing this? Where did I learn that being alone wasn't safe? Why don't I feel like I can sit with myself by myself? That question, I think, for me, changed everything. Because even though I tried to push it out of my head, because I did, it just was glaring at a point. Because once I saw it, I just kept seeing it over and over again. And I realized that if being alone really felt okay, then I wouldn't be going through all of this drama and chaos to avoid it. Because I was basically willing to stay in all of these unsafe relationships, all of these unsafe bonds, just to not be by myself. And I mean, later in therapy, years later, I learned, I guess, that that's like attachment theory and those are trauma responses. But at the time, I didn't have the words for it. I just knew that it wasn't right, that something was off, right? And that didn't really sit well with me because I always had to act tough and act like I said, I'm independent. I don't need a man. I don't need anybody. I'm with him because I want to be, but I don't need him. And I think it was like a shameful experience because I felt so just ashamed because I wasn't even honest with myself ever about anything. And now I had no choice but to face myself. I don't know. And the thing I learned is that, well, I believe that we don't randomly end up with people, right? So I think we choose people um, based on what's going on with inside of us. So if I don't feel safe alone, yes, I'm going to choose being with anybody over being by myself. If I don't trust myself, or if I don't want to face myself and really sit with myself, chaos feels safer than calm. I don't know. So I think relationships in general, particularly all relationships, but particularly romantic relationships, really show you parts of yourself that you haven't looked at yet, or that you just don't want to look at, that you are ignoring. And for me, once I started to see that, I could not, unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, ignore it anymore. I might have felt like unfortunately back then, but I started noticing so many things about myself, right? And it really shifted the way I looked at relationships, and I stopped looking at myself as a victim. I don't know. I think another thing I have learned in relationships is how transactional I am. I do things not out of love, but out of creating obligation, like obligation to me, right? Even in my marriage. So, like, if I'm useful, if I'm loyal, if I do enough, if I give enough, then you can't leave me. Like, you have to do X, Y, and Z for me because I'm doing all of these things for you. And this is something that I have done always looking back, but I didn't know it until recently. Um, it's something I'm actually working on and just discovering now. So yeah, you don't fix something overnight that literally you've been doing your whole life because has made you feel safe. So I think what changes for us is not the behavior. Behavior doesn't change first. It's basically how we begin to see ourselves and how we begin to talk to ourselves. And so for me, I definitely started with self-talk or coaching. I didn't say I was doing that, but we've all been there like, girl, what are you doing? You're talking to yourself. Girl, you know you don't deserve that. You know that this isn't right. Like, what are you doing? This isn't okay. Like, so you start like just talking to yourself and really you coaching yourself, you know? I don't know. And then later in like cognitive behavioral therapy, of course, I learned that that's actually a thing, like self-coaching and self-talk. Huh. So I think over time, my choices slowly began to follow my thoughts and the way that I would see myself, the way that I would talk to myself. And it showed up outside of dating too. Because, like, in my relationships with family, I realized I was extremely defensive all the time. Even when people who loved me were just trying to help me. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it does not mean that they were right, because they weren't right all the time. They were not right a lot of the time. But it doesn't matter. Criticism felt like a threat to me, like a huge threat. And I had to ask myself, why? Why does this trip you up so much? Who cares? Like, who cares what they say? But it's because I was wearing this armor, not just for other people, but for myself. I didn't want to look at myself. So when people would point out things that I was trying not to look at, I would go off. I just couldn't face certain things. And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. I wasn't ready to. I know that I always stayed busy. I stayed attached to people. I stayed in motion always. I was just always doing everything, running here, running there, doing. I never would just like be by myself because chaos can feel really safe when you don't trust yourself. I don't know. There's moments with my daughter too where I caught myself reacting the wrong way instead of responding with thought and with intention. And I remember thinking, like, I remember the moment actually. I was screaming at her about something she had done, maybe talked back or something, I don't know. And I was like, oh no, I can't. I don't want to pass this down. I do not want to pass this down. So I think you begin to repair yourself slowly, right? You choose differently when you can. And I think that's how cycles break. That's how cycles are broken in my life. Never with perfection, never immediately, but just with awareness and then slow repair, slowly, consistent. I don't know. I don't know. And I think I even at times I'm too critical of others and I give myself a pass because I'm like, oh, I'm critical of myself. So I get to treat you poorly because I treat myself poorly. And that justifies it. I hold myself to the same standard. I would always tell myself that when I was like being too overly critical of other people or just mean to other people. I hold myself to the same standard, so nothing's wrong with it. But I'm just spreading my toxicity around, spreading my harm around or harm around. I don't know. I don't know. I think that like agency today looks different for me. I think it's not a big dramatic change like I thought it would be. Like I said, it's consistently choosing yourself in small, very boring ways. But consistency is the key. And yeah, pausing instead of spiraling, giving yourself grace. Because again, a lot of shame comes with you realizing certain behaviors and patterns and admitting to it. You can put yourself down, right? You can also, I think, stop over criticizing other people and let them just be people. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, this podcast is kind of a part of that for me because I'm choosing myself over other people, and a lot of people aren't going to like the things that I say. I know that, but I mean, I'm not using names or anything, but I'm saying things and telling stories that people aren't going to like. But I'm choosing myself over it. And I think it's important to ask yourself, what are your intentions when you do something, right? What are you doing out of fear instead of doing it genuinely from your heart because you want to? Why are you trying to earn something that should be given freely? Like, I was definitely trying to earn people's love and people's attention. Like, what's actually driving those choices? Is it love or are you protecting yourself in some way, shape, or form? I don't know. And maybe these questions don't really have anything to do with you and your story, right? Maybe being transactional isn't your thing. Maybe you're not afraid of being alone with yourself. But those were my questions. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you have your own questions that you can begin to ask, right? Because none of this is about fixing ourselves overnight. That's impossible. You got to let go of that right now if that's what you're thinking this is about. You're not going to be this perfect person just because now you're in therapy or now you're noticing things or, you know, it's just not how it works. It's about intention. It's about choosing a little more honesty than you did yesterday. That's all I got for today. Thanks for being here. Thank you for sitting with me. Thanks for listening. Um, if you're already doing this work, hey, keep going. Keep going. Until next episode, peace, y'all.